Good morning, y'all. One thing I can't promise this morning is that I won't cry when I'm up here, but I was raised by a priest who preaches, who cried almost every Sunday when he delivered his homilies. So the example I have is that that's okay. But I didn't think it would happen, and then Charity started talking, and I was like, oh, no, it's here. The emotion is here. So, as my advisor at Meadville says to us at the beginning of each semester, grace abounds. And it is a joy to be here with you again this Sunday. On a Sunday when I have to tell you I needed some church, when I needed my people, on a Sunday where I need as much as I have ever needed in my life to feel connection and to be in community. I'd like to open my time with you today and center into my topic and meet this moment with words written by Reverend Gretchen Haley only this week, and then graciously shared with you ministers all working on worship together this week. She brings these words to us. Bring your heart here, your broken, tender heart. Weary, worried, disgusted, despairing. Give thanks that you can count yourself among the brokenhearted and the grieving, the disoriented and the afraid. Praise the good news that your heart has not hardened in despair or fear. Ground yourself in the grace that you are not alone in this wishing for another world. A life more certain, a time that made more sense, a confidence in the future, a clarity of what it all means. Every new world begins when we show up in community with our broken hearts and refuse to forget our fear, and also refuse to shut down. When we keep singing and praying and sighing, when we stay put in the arena, when we find joy even here, laughter and joy and courage beyond what we could have ever imagined on our own. Courage to keep our hearts open, knowing they'll keep on breaking. Courage to let what is beautiful be even bigger than what is broken. And courage to let this ending also be a beginning. To accept this day, this moment, these people, this hour as a gift. And to say again and again, thank you. So this is a Sunday where UU churches across our country will be uniquely in sync with their topics. Because in a time such as this, we have no choice but to meet the moment, to acknowledge what time we are in. I know that many of us may be in different places this week. I admit I don't yet know you well enough to predict what's in your heart. But I do know this is a fraught time, a time of worry, a liminal space between the events and great unveiling of this last week and whatever may come in January. Today, I come to you with the intention of holding some precious space for all of our hearts, to allow us to be where we are, and perhaps to open the door just a crack into starting to think about what may come next. We spent these last several months worrying about what was going to happen this week. In my own household, we carried this intermittent conversation over the last few weeks in fits and starts, one that mostly centered on our worry that the outcome would be what it was. And we could never stay in the conversation for more than about 15 seconds because the anxiety was too great. But it was something like, hey, it's soon. Yeah, I think it's not going to go okay. Yeah, me too. Okay. And then we would just like keep going. Like, too much. Because at the same time, so many people in our world were saying that it couldn't happen. People would recognize the hatred being offered to them and they would say no. People all around me were saying words like landslide and phrases like, there's no way this will happen. And yet I worried. So many of us worried because it had happened before. And because some of us have lived experiences that let us know just how much people can feel emboldened to express hatred of those that they see as other. And for many of us who live where we live, in a state like ours, in a region like ours, where the enthusiasm for anti-trans rhetoric, anti-immigrant views, and support of Christian nationalist worldviews is widespread and in many places socially acceptable to express, well, no one has to convince us that people are ready to put others in power who uphold these views, because we see it everywhere we go. But even if we believe this outcome was possible, even if we expected it, that does not mean it was easy to take it in stride. This does not mean that we do not feel rage. This does not mean that we do not feel grief. This does not mean that we, some of us, do not feel real, embodied fear. And my friends, if that's where you are, that is absolutely okay. I am with you. I believe that your rage and your grief are holy and righteous. I honor it. And for some of us, that may be as far as we can get right now. And I think that's okay. I think that makes sense, because so much of the situation we are in seems inscrutable. So if the rest of what I have to say isn't for you right now, that's fine. Just let it wash past you. Maybe come back to it another day. Maybe we can talk about it later. But I do want to recognize that for some of us, we're not ready to move out of that initial wave, that initial grief. But still, I have these questions. There are so many questions. Like, how can so many people think this is okay? How can so many people endorse this rhetoric and this lack of kindness, this lack of decency? Some of us may hold the question, how can so many people hate me? How can they be so willing to put my safety on the line? For these questions, again, I hold space, and I offer a loving, non-judging presence. And there is no single answer for any of these questions. There is no clear reason why. Because as painful and as frightening as this outcome is for so many, and how ominous the platform is that we expect to be put into action, we know that people made their choices based on so many different reasons. We know, as Universalists, and those who stand up for the inherent worth and dignity of every person, that there is a story and a lived experience that caused each and every one of us here and elsewhere to make the decisions we made. That goes for the 27% of Americans who voted for the victor, the other roughly 25% who voted the other way, and the nearly 50% who didn't vote at all. I'm not up here to make excuses for anyone, but as our tradition of freedom of the pulpit allows, I am here to share my perspective. And from that perspective, I am going to gently suggest that we consider those other perspectives, those experiences, and those fears that have driven the choices of others. Because if we want to make any sense of the world, if we want to get the ground underneath our feet in any sense, we at least need to remind ourselves, fairly consistently, that all of us live with different versions of how the world truly is. In a time when the whole world on its surface seems divided into doing what we can when we can in order to not necessarily even find connection with everyone, but at least do our best to see each other, makes all the difference as we try to navigate this new, or rather unveiled, reality. As once again, we work to begin again. But if that is something I suggest we do, I will also say that even in doing that, there are other things we cannot do. We cannot abandon those most targeted by this hateful derision that has been so recently endorsed in this country. When we hear of our trans siblings being persecuted, we are called to stand up for them. When we see hatred and vilification poured out onto immigrants, we are called to offer them sanctuary. When we see lies projected as truth in order to further the agenda of those who wish to take power away from those who need our help the most, we will speak out against those lies. We will be the beacon of love and hope and justice that we are called to be in this world. I know this is something we will do. This week, the Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, president of our Unitarian Universalist Association, reminded us in a message to UU sent after the election that we are a sanctuary people. Our communities, our churches, our homes, even the national headquarters of the UUA have all been used in different ways to offer safe harbor for those who need it most. And as UU's living in one of the most conservative parts of the country, I believe that we are specifically called to this moment. I know that there are people we know who are not here today who need our help, who need our companionship, who need connection. The last thing we can ever consider in a moment such as this is to isolate. We must connect. We must strengthen and widen our communities. We must be a sanctuary. I know that for many, figuring out what it is that we can do to help in moments such as this, when so much is at stake, when so many face persecution, when so many stand to lose so much, can be daunting. But I urge you gently and with a heart filled with love to do as these words from the Talmud instruct us. Do not be deluded by the world's grief. Act justly now. Love mercy now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. My friends, we have been here before. In my own adult lifetime, we have been here plenty. I remember the despair my friends and I felt in 2006 when Tennessee's anti-same-sex marriage amendment passed with over 80% of the vote. I remember I was 26 years old and I remember I'm bringing a break at work, smoking a cigarette, crying, like I knew they didn't like us, but like 81%, like it was a blow. It was a punch in the stomach. I remember very well how I felt in 2016. I remember how I felt in these last 12 months as piece after piece of anti-LGBTQ legislation came down from our own state house. And that is just my life. My experience as a queer, though often straight and always cis-passing white person born 44 years ago. Each of you carries a lifetime of experiences and have witnessed so much, both on the micro, personal scale, as well as the world stage that can offer you examples of your own resilience. Our country's long history is rife with these examples and full of witnesses. This derision is not new. These fears are not felt for the first time. We have been here before. And I relay these circumstances not just to list off a roster of hard moments, but instead to remind myself of just a few of the times that I and so many of us have found a way to ground ourselves in our resilience, in community, in love, in our resolve to not back down, to not give in to forces that work to blind us to our own interconnection and our duty to one another. The world needs you in all moments, but especially this one. The world needs you. If you are feeling scared right now, I implore you to care for yourself and be bold enough to ask for care if you need it. If you are not fearful now, and if perhaps you don't understand the fear felt by someone else, then use that strength you are holding to offer your help. Seek to understand them. See them. And that is the ticket to all of this, isn't it? Really, truly making the effort to see ourselves and to see each other without our assumptions clouding our vision. I truly believe, as basic as it sounds, that seeing each other is the key to understanding, which then leads us to unlock the ability to love one another. And when we love one another, we create more safety for each other. And when we feel safe, we are able to prioritize the safety of others. When we work for each other's safety and care, we create a better world. A world where love is at the center, where all have what they need, where no one is alone. I do believe this other world is possible, even if I don't place my hope on living to see it. I don't think that's the point. All we can do is the next right thing. All we can do is begin again and again, even in moments as large and as daunting as this one. It's all we've ever done. It's who we are called to be. I'm going to move towards my close today with some words that were shared with me by my mentor this week, and I think have also been widely shared on Facebook. So some of you may have seen them before. They were written by Native American writer and organizer Venice Williams. And as I read these words to you, my intention is to remind you of where we've been, of what we're capable of where we're going, but never neglecting your own tender heart. You are awakening to the same country you fell asleep to, the very same country. Pull yourself together. And when you see me, do not ask me, what do we do now? How do we get through the next 40 years? You can ask me that. Some of my ancestors dealt with at least 400 years of this under worse conditions. Continue to do the good work. Continue to build bridges, not walls. Continue to lead with compassion. Continue to do the demanding work of liberation for all. Continue to dismantle broken systems, large and small. Continue to set the best example for the children. Continue to be a vessel of nourishing joy. Continue right where you are, right where you live into your days. Amen. May it be so. May our service to each other and to the world begin again, renewed. Somebody add boxes of